So now that I've accepted Islam, I'm really happy that I...
And I genuinely believe that Allah is the best of planners.
If you can unpackage this, you said if Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was alive today, he'd probably get canceled.
Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam had an Instagram page, he would have been cancelled hard. Nowadays, modern day culture is... It's degenerate. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from Satan the accursed. Tell me that isn't the plight of modern men, especially young men today.
What's your feel now with everything? Because now they can only hold him until the end of this month.
I managed to procure meals at around 80 cents each, so we'll feed over 60,000 children.
What was your thoughts now on him being, Andrew and Tristan being released on the date that the Matrix was
Yeah, wasn't
released?
that interesting? I've seen some articles lately saying that, a lot of men with conservative values are turning to Islam, and this is concerning. I'm like, hang on a sec, that's a good thing.
Alhamdulillah, brothers and sisters, as you can see, we've acquired the property and we're getting right to work. And with your du'as and support, we can go ahead and get the masjid and mega dawah center up, open, and running, inshallah. Imagine every person that prays here, gets educated and guided to Islam here. You'll get a part of all those blessings and rewards, inshallah. What are you waiting for, brothers and sisters? You're going to leave it all behind anyway, so go ahead and invest in your hereafter that's everlasting. Click the link below, donate right now. May God Almighty Allah reward all of you.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings and peace. Welcome to the Deen Show. I'm Eddie, your host. I got a special guest here in this Deen Show studio. You've probably seen him on the jets and parties from the past and right now, but he's got a new way of life. We're going to be talking about that way of life. Also, we're going to be talking about Andrew Tate, bringing us up to speed on some of the BBC interview that just happened.
I allowed you into my home. I'm doing you a favor, giving you the first interview I'm giving to the public. You don't come here with a position of authority. You're not the police. I don't respect the BBC.
And some of the other things. We got a lot to talk about with Julius, a.k.a. the Sartorial Shooter.
Let me introduce you to my faith. We have one God, his name's Allah. And his final messenger's Muhammad. Peace be upon him. This is our religion, Islam. This is the Deen Show.
I love you very much, all the work that you're doing.
When I was ready to talk about it, I would only talk to guests.
And I was explaining how much respect I have for the faith of Islam.
Welcome to the Deen Show. The Deen Show.
Yeah, thank you, man. I can use my name now, Jewel. I've been doxxed, so I'm happy with Jewel. Before I used to hide behind the Sartorial Shooter a bit, because I naturally am a bit of a private person, but I went loud to support Tate, and my Instagram blew up because of being associated with Tate. So yeah, I'm out there now. So yeah, Jewel is good, man.
Jewel is good. Right. A few years back, I don't know how long ago, this is probably over a year, maybe two, something like that. I was watching one of these videos. I saw you in it. And it was Tristan and Andrew. It was really Tristan was pushing you to have a drink, and you were running to go sleep and avoiding it.
Yeah. 100%.
And I was in my cell. I said, I'd like to meet this brother.
Yeah.
I would say, I would like to meet this brother.
Yeah,
I said, I'd like to give him dawah. I'd like to talk to him about Islam. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Because it seemed like from that time, I was seeing you were kind of less partying than others or whatnot, and it was very interesting.
I have zero love for the partying, zero love for alcohol. And now, alhamdulillah, I've got a nice solid reason to, with respect to Tristan, tell him to, go away. Like that's it. And he'll respect that too. I mean, there is good brotherhood, there is good competition, and a part of that was drinking. And the issue with Tristan is he doesn't feel alcohol. It's almost inhuman. And so one of his party tricks is to get other people drunk and to show that it doesn't affect him. Yeah. I used to hate it. Like, you do it as brothers, competing and so on. But even before I took Shahada, I knew that hedonism, I knew that alcohol, I knew that all these things, they're low frequency. Like, I don't know how to speak about it in a more sort of scientific manner. It's all low frequency stuff. When you go into a nightclub where a bunch of people are drunk and looking to have, superficial sex, it's dark energy stuff. It's not healthy. It's not a positive vibe, if you will, for want of a better way to put it. And so now that I've accepted Islam, I'm really happy that I have a reason to say, no, that's not the sort of person I am. I'm not doing that. And also, a lot of people are like, oh, you've had to give up this, you've had to give up that. Show me a negative from giving up alcohol. Show me one. You know? Like, it's all positive, man. Everything, all the restrictions that Islam brings, if you can call them that, I see the intelligence behind it, because they all have a positive net impact on who you are as a man, your ability to work hard for your family, to stay disciplined, to resist temptation and shaitan and jinn and all these things. Every single change I've made has been a clear positive, and I'm very grateful for it.
Alhamdulillah. Speaking of that, I mean, I remember back in what we say Jahiliyyah, you know the term Jahiliyyah, the days of ignorance we call it. Or, I used to actually own a part of a nightclub. So when I quit drinking, that was the hardest thing, was to be around other people who were drinking.
You just you want no part of it. When you've seen through the mirage that society tries to push on you, Western society, hey, you know, get drunk, have fun, explore yourself. Maybe even, you know, you see a lot of, like, say, Vice, for example, pushing drug use, saying, oh, yeah, it's good to use this, and here's some tips to how to use drug. It's all deeply unhealthy stuff. And so when you've lifted yourself up, and again, I don't want to say anything that's inappropriate, but I really do feel like since taking Shahada, I'm operating at a different frequency. I have a cleaner energy as a man, and both in terms of the external world and how I carry myself during the day, but also internally, I feel, how to put it, I just feel like there's more pure and more energetically sound, if that makes sense. Not engaging in stuff which deep down I know is a waste of time. And I see nightclubs and I see all these venues as places where, on an energetic level, it drags you down. It drags you into stuff which we're not meant to be doing as humans. So yeah, I understand that, man.
Wow. I remember when I first started to implement a lot of the teachings of Islam, I felt healthier. You know, I right away established the prayer, and I heard you talking about, you know, the discipline that comes with that. How you were really seeing the power of attending the masjid. It's right by your house.
Superpower. Yeah.
Superpower.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's because I'm pretty busy. I'm pretty tied into Donya, if you will. I have a lot of people who rely on me, both family, employees, so on. I do a lot of mentoring within Tate's organization, the War Room. I mentor hundreds of guys. You know, there's a lot of my attention is pulled, or my time is pulled in many different directions. And I don't really believe in stress or any of these things, but I do get to the point where it's constant churn, and then before you know it, the day's over. The beauty of Salah, especially, you know, being able to walk across to the masjid, that's the time, you know, your heart can be at rest. And I really feel the benefits of that. I have a little ritual. I take my How to Pray book. I'm still learning. I don't claim to be any sort of authority. I take my How to Pray book, and I'll sit and I'll read through, because I want to be really specific with prayer, and I'm getting there. I want to make sure not only am I saying the right words, but I'm understanding the words and understanding the intent behind them. And obviously, even just the simple act of prayer, there's a lot of depth to it. You know, it's I think just learning the words and saying them without really understanding why you're saying what you're saying, you're missing a trick. And so I take my book in there a little early. I'll read, I'll pray, and sometimes afterwards I'll sit and I'll read some more. There's no phones. There's no calls. There's no, hey, I want this meeting. My attention is not pulled in many different directions. That simple act of turning off Donya and focusing on what's real and that deeper element to life, it's energetically, I see a very clear boost. It's almost like hitting a refresh button multiple times a day. I love it. And when when I'm traveling, when I'm not in Dubai, I genuinely long for it. I long for being able to go to the masjid. Like, I feel, and this is new for me, I feel something's missing by not having that refresh button set numerous times a day.
This is kind of similar to my story. When I first started practicing Islam, and I started right away, I said, okay, what does God Almighty want from me? The establishment of the prayer 5 times a day minimum. I did the same thing. I had, you know, Cat Stevens, Yusuf Islam, you know, the former singer. He put together a really nice instruction on how to pray, and he had an audio book with it. I actually was putting earphones on. I was opening the book and I was reading it. I had no clue, you know, and I was saying, but I wanted to do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, I wanted to do it right, and alhamdulillah, over time, got it.
Awesome. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm 40 years old now, and learning isn't as easy as it used to be. You know, I now know how to spend. I can take 1 hour of my time and turn that into X amount of dollars. 1 hour of my time and turn that into X amount of positive impact with the businesses that I run or the people I mentor. Putting that aside and just focusing on learning something can be a little bit difficult. Whereas the time that I put into learning about Islam, I want more. It's not a chore. I'm not having to force myself to learn. If anything, I'm consciously prioritizing my life so I've got more time to learn, and that's a very rare thing.
Yeah.
For example, I have numerous languages that I need to maintain. It's very hard to find the motivation to put aside the world and, you know, conquest and growth and all these things and just focus on maintaining these languages. I find that a challenging thing to do. Whereas putting aside all the business and all the mentoring and focusing on Islam, I love it. I do it every day. Every day is part of my sleep hygiene. I'll read something about our faith, and the more I read, the more I want to read. That's a very unique sensation as a man. Everything else that I have to learn can be a chore, whereas learning about Islam it's the more energy I put in, the more energy I get out of it. It's really cool.
This is similar to my journey. Yes, it was like I never actually read so much in my life until I really, you know, or enjoyed learning as much as when I started to really, because everything just made sense.
Exactly, it clicks, doesn't it?
It clicks.
I pretty much have stopped reading, to be honest, until I took Shahada. Now I'm reading again. So it's because you know how it is with devices and with phone calls and meetings. It's constant churn. I think your brain gets less stimulus when you just take an old school book and, you know, slow down and read and focus on one thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everyone's, you know, they're watching TV and they got their devices out and they're having conversations with people. Putting all that aside and just focusing on something very slow and manual like reading, I think less and less people are doing that nowadays. Whereas Islam gives you that motivation to just slow yourself down and focus on what's real. I think it's a very sacred thing.
Let's back it up for a minute. So some people are like, okay, we've heard he was your guest here, Jewel, Sartorial Shooter. That was the name that you go by. Was he the manager of Andrew Tate? He's one of the best friends? You know, can you fill us in a little bit on?
Excellent. So yeah, anyone who thinks I'm the manager of Andrew Tate, you try managing Andrew Tate. I'm sorry, Andrew Tate's going to do what Andrew Tate does, and same with Tristan. Like the idea that these two gentlemen will ever have a manager, that's just someone, you know, not knowing who they are. They are ferociously focused on their mission, and they'll take counsel. And you know, obviously we have a lot of chats on a daily basis. You know, we'll bounce things back and forth. I'll put forward my ideas. Some of them are adopted, some of them are not. The perspective I come is that of risk. You know, I have a master's degree in risk management. I have a former career in pretty senior security roles for large organizations and supporting ultra high net worth individuals. But there's no way that I could ever manage those guys. They are self-managed, so to speak. So close friends, have been for about 5 years, and the reason why I felt the responsibility to go loud, even though doing so doesn't really benefit me. I mean, off the back of my social media following, I sell, and promote various Tate products, which I really believe in. Both the War Room, you know, we have a really strong brotherhood there, and the real world, because I've seen the positive impacts these things have. I wouldn't put my name behind something if I didn't, you know, manually, personally see the benefits, and I do. So you could argue that there's some benefit from promoting these things. It's negligible in terms of the financial return. Me being out in the public sphere doesn't give me benefits. People coming up asking for photos. I'm not the photo guy. I spent years of my life, and especially my professional career, being the guy who's not photographed. You know, it doesn't. I'm not. Yeah. I don't want the clout or fame. I think having social media following is a bit like having money in Monopoly. Like who cares? You know, it's not real. Whereas I had the duty to go loud and support these brothers, because outside of their direct family, I've spent the most time with them over the last 5 years. You know, they've been in my house, I've been in their house. Yeah. The jets, the yachts. I've been in the houses where apparently these allegations have taken place, and I've seen that it's all nonsense. So I had to go out and I had to speak, and I'm doing that to the best of my ability, and I'll continue to do it because I know the truth. I've seen the truth, and as I've said numerous times, I'm definitely not objective. I'm highly subjective. I love these guys as brothers, as family, but I'm still credible. You know, as I've said before, I held top-level secret clearances in my previous lines of work. I've held very senior corporate positions. Anyone who knows me or has interacted with me professionally knows that I'm a good judge of character. You know, I have ethics, and I'm a credible witness, if you will, as to what has and hasn't happened. And so it's my duty to come out and speak openly for these brothers, because as I have to believe, you know, history will show, what's being accused is laughable. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. And we can go into details if you want. I don't know how.
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's touch upon that for some of the viewing audience who really all they've seen is some of the tabloids or some of the mainstream media. I've had many different guests on, and we've kind of went over a lot of these things. I've covered a lot of it, but for those who don't know, fill us in. You know, I'll start off. You have some allegations. You have some secret witnesses. Who we don't know who they are. You have others who are coming forward, if I remember correctly, saying that we're not victims, but they're put on a victim list.
Yep.
Then you have, I don't know if these were as a prostitute or stripper coming forward from Maleta, what's the country, or somewhere from
Moldova.
Moldova.
Yeah, but was living in the UK when she met Tate, as I understand it.
Yeah. And then you have things coming up from like 10 years ago from a business.
Mhm.
Now there's all of a sudden coming up, and please fill in the blanks.
Yep, happy to do so. So first of all, I don't represent Tate in a formal manner in any way.
Yeah.
I'm his friend. I'm not his manager. I also don't have the authority to speak on legal matters, and indeed
Yeah.
I'll be very careful with what I say.
But you'd put your neck on the line here.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I will, any court that wants me to go and swear in front of, you know, our holy book or whatever the requirements are, I will go on record and I will tell the truth. Like I'm ready. Summon me, I'll fly in wherever. Like I'm quite prepared to do it. So speaking the truth as I've seen, without in any way representing Tate officially or in any way, you know, pretending to be a legal professional, which I'm not. The allegations, as was discussed in Tate's emergency meeting today, are that in 2021, the Tate brothers formed an organised crime group with the intent to draw women into Romania under false pretenses and then steal their TikTok money. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the claim is that men who only fly private, rent super yachts, own Bugattis, you know, are financially made, for some reason went to great lengths to try and steal somebody's TikTok money, like insignificant amounts of money.
Yeah.
And these tabloids trying to claim that, oh yes, you know, look at the lifestyle they made, it's from exploiting women. I'm sorry, I don't really know the industry, but I'm pretty sure TikTok money doesn't buy Bugattis. Let's be real here. It's absolute nonsense. And there are numerous platforms that Tate has, such as The Real World. They have, I think it's 150,000 members or more, paying $50 a month with a very high recurring rate. That's where money comes from products like that, which are highly effective in that they're teaching a lot of people, you know, skills you can monetize, and they continue to be successful over time. You know, if trying to say that they're somehow doing something nefarious, join that platform and have a look at how active it is. You know, there's no mystery as to where their money comes from. So the idea that there's somehow I mean, as I understand it, and again, I never worked in law enforcement, but I did work with people who were, you know, even in the security industry, a lot of people are ex-law enforcement. As I understand it, with crimes, there needs to be some kind of credible intent as to why someone would do it. What's the intent for financially independent, very high status individuals to go to great lengths to steal someone's TikTok money? It's quite simply not real. Whereas on the flip side, as we know, as you get more famous as a man, as you get more and more publicly known to be wealthy, there are certain individuals out there, you don't need to gender it, man or woman, who'd want to get a piece of that fame, get a piece of that wealth. And the individual that you referred to, the one from Moldova, the way they met was when she was working as a stripper. She said to Andrew, I want to get famous on TikTok because I want a set amount of money with which to buy a house. Now, as I understand it, Andrew said, well, yeah, I know a thing or two about internet marketing. I can help you out. The idea that he's somehow deceiving women, she was the one who said to him she wanted to get famous. You know, again, why does someone pushing a Bugatti have to try and exploit somebody for TikTok money? The whole thing's completely illogical. And the way the media has had an absolute field day on pushing these clearly illogical narratives, I didn't really trust mainstream media previously, to be honest, but I've seen firsthand that the lies and it's not incompetence. I mean, if you're a journalist, you have basic investigative skills. This is an agenda. It's a very clear agenda being pushed consciously by people who, and you mentioned that BBC interview, people who don't want to know the truth. Some of the allegations that lady from the BBC was pushing can be debunked easily with the basic research skills. She's a so-called journalist. She can't even find it out. And I'll give you one example.
Lucy?
Lucy. One example was she said to Tate during that interview, you are talking about putting a machete in a woman's face and being violent. It's like, hang on a sec. That's an out-of-context soundbite which has been pushed around the world. The full-form video, which if you're a journalist, you could probably dig up. It's not, it's out there. It's not hidden. Is Tate saying, I have a lot of machetes in my house. If a woman, for example, found out I was cheating and she came at me with a machete, what would I do? I'd bang the machete out. I'd grab her, restrain her, so on. He was talking in a self-defense context. Yet this so-called career journalist can't determine that, and she comes at him with allegations. He's talking about attacking a woman with a machete. It's there, it's on record. So again, this is not incompetence on behalf of BBC and other mainstream media outlets. This is a clear agenda where they don't even care about the truth. They're just trying to push their narrative. It is so apparent and so disgustingly obvious that I have to believe that anyone with basic common sense can see that the agenda at play is dirty and not based on truth, and that mainstream media simply cannot be trusted nowadays. They've proven that.
How do you think they handled the Andrew Tate video of you versus the, was it Philip Schofield?
Morning telly presenter Philip Schofield's brother, Timothy Schofield, has been sentenced to 12 years in prison for sexual abuse of a child.
And his brother,
isn't that amazing? I mean,
Timothy, the one who was convicted for pedophilia.
That's a great example. Yeah, it was very interesting to see BBC basically showing empathy in the way they were reporting the Philip Schofield proven case of pedophilia, as I understand it, proven on record. Whereas Tate has allegations, which if you look at them as a journalist with basic investigative skills, you'd see just don't make sense logically. Yet they're coming after him with all these attempted gotcha questions and these false claims and these easily debunked with some basic research, illogical parallels that they're trying to draw to think, oh look, we've got him. He said something bad 10 years ago, therefore that proves that he would do some sort of bizarre exploitative crime in recent times. It's such nonsense, and I have to believe that the majority of the world are waking up and realizing that modern day media is not seeking and reporting the truth. They are simply pushing an agenda. They are a psyop tool that is not working in your favor as a citizen.
Mm-hmm. Here's the ironic thing that, okay, if you are someone who's, let's say you've done some things in the past, right? If you're saying this is my position, what I'm about now, just like Islamically, like if we don't try to hunt for people's mistakes or whatever, if somebody's done something in the past, whatever the case, and a lot of some of the filming and all this is, if I understand, this is from like 10 to 11 years ago. This is a different lifestyle, different whatever. And then now Andrew Tate has a challenge. He's trying to go ahead and promote and have the mainstream media, I think he put something out there, a challenge for the 25 million or something for charity.
I dedicate $25 million a year to feeding children, both male and female, in war-torn countries. I would like to think that even the legacy media can agree that feeding children in Sudan, or Turkish children after an earthquake, or Syrian children in refugee camps is a pretty positive thing to do for the world. In my last BBC interview, she tried to spin it and say that what I'm doing is somehow negative because I'm only doing it for myself. But this is the level of delusion these people operate under.
Because some people would look at that and say, okay, so before you got money from attracting people to your website by making controversial comments, but that might have got you into trouble. And so now you're looking for a new market. You're looking for a new market of followers who are attracted by a different sort of persona.
I've always done the charity work, so that is obviously incorrect. And I have proof that I've always done the charity work, so you're wrong. I managed to procure meals at around 80 cents each, so we'll feed over 60,000 children. And I also promised to provide full accounting and receipts to prove that that money goes directly to charity, to feeding children in war-torn countries.
Example. So this is the thing. The ironic thing is now, and just showing them being so disingenuous. Like, okay, there's a man trying to do some good now. He's trying to better his life, right? Why don't you try to highlight some of these things?
Definitely.
Why are you trying to just get a highlight moment or I got you moment and run with that?
Definitely. And I think that's a very good example of the fact that this is not about truth. This is about them pushing an agenda. Not only do they not report on all the charity that he's doing, and that he has been doing for a while, he's just gone public with it now. Everyone trying to analyse Tate and so they can understand him. Tate put out something called the 41 Tenets of Tate. And that's the beliefs that he lives by and he believes that men should live by. And basically it comes down to traditional values, being stoic, being mentally resilient, and working as hard as you can to be the best version of a man that you can be to provide for your brothers, your family, your society, and so on. Not one single journalist has even looked at these. They're on the website. Everyone's trying to hypothesize and analyze Andrew Tate and figure out what he is about and what he's not. He's written at length his 41 beliefs that he lives by. Not a single journalist has even thought to refer to that in their deep diving analysis and investigation about who he really is. It's quite laughable, to be honest. And this is why you'll see everyone who actually knows Andrew has come out and said, hang on, no, this is nonsense. And I'm the single most informed person on the planet as to who these brothers really are, because I've been around them more than anyone else outside their family. These are good men. They're men who are fiercely driven, fiercely principled, and who strongly believe they have the support of, I'd say, with Tristan, with God, but with Andrew, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to represent traditional values, to represent old school, looking after men, being providers, protectors, that the family unit's sacred, that traditional gender roles are an important thing, all these different things, and to motivate young men to resist this sheep programming, this demasculinization that we see on whether it's Netflix or music or Hollywood, you name it, from all angles it's coming. The Tates genuinely, strongly believe they are leading the fight against all of that liberal nonsense, and they're prepared to essentially suffer a lot for it. They are prepared to go to jail if needed, and to take whatever heat they're taking and all this negative nonsense being thrown at them to push that positive masculine message of pursuing excellence. I think it's quite a noble thing.
You have even a lot of people who weren't fans of Andrew Tate. They were getting fed up. They're like, just charge him already. Yeah. It was like when he was in the dungeon, in the Romanian dungeon there, and that was really sad to see. Where were all the human rights activists, people stepping up? Why you got this man in a dungeon now? Not charged, anything. Where's the innocent? But we got that here. But I mean, how was that? Like at that time, alhamdulillah, he's out now. But how many months was he in the dungeon?
He was in for 3 months, and he's still restricted to his house, so he's not free, so to speak.
What happened now? They changed some of the charges. Something got shifted around, or?
Yeah, as I understand it, it's. I mean, I've looked at that and I can't really comprehend the difference. They're just trying to say, instead of it being, set amount of 1 or 2 or 3 victims, they're saying, it's bigger than that, as I understand it. But again, where's the evidence?
Where's the evidence?
And why would, again, logically, why would people who are financially made risk all of that and even devote the time? They're very time poor. They're busy guys to try and steal or deceive someone out of their TikTok money. They are the claims.
What was interesting was that, and I covered this with... how's our friend Moneybags?
Yes, Dylan.
Dylan. How's he doing?
Yeah, he's good.
I covered this with him. There was, was it them, the Moldova lady and the other one, and they were sitting back talking about how they're going to get an Oscar for with the messages.
So through official sources, through the relevant Romanian agencies, there were leaks. There's been a lot of leaks. Pretty strange stuff. Anyway, there were leaks of the WhatsApp chats between the 2 main complainants, and in that they were saying, "Hey, you did really well. You deserve an Oscar for this. Hey, we're going to go straight to Netflix." They are openly, and it's on record, saying, first of all, prior, let's conspire to frame these guys essentially, and afterwards, here's the ways we can benefit. So if we look at the 2 parties involved, the Tates and the people making the complaints, Tates have no intent or reason to do these actions, whereas the people making the complaints, they have clear and on-record intent, which is to get fame, to get money, to essentially benefit from these false claims, and that's on record. And with these so-called journalists, these investigative experts, they can't look at that, and they can't see which side of the argument makes more sense on a purely logical level, who's standing to benefit and who's not. It's very clear.
You were actually looking into Islam, if I understood, for was it around 15 years?
Yeah, indeed. I first went to the Middle East in 2004.
2004. And then your journey began slowly, being around Muslims.
Yeah, a lot of people doing dawah, as I now understand it. But over that time,
I often say, because if you care, you share. This is just, because there's a lot of misconceptions, you know what I mean? People have all these different negative thoughts. So a Muslim, he, in his behavior and his attitude, he starts meeting someone. People talk about football, baseball, and everything. Why not talk about, the purpose of life and let the people decide if they want. If not, just like you. Obviously, someone talked to you, and here we are.
Yeah, exactly. A bit more important than football, So I lived in Iran, Iraq, Saudi, a lot of time in other Middle Eastern countries. I lived in Iraq as well. And through this time, I noticed that the men that I respect the most were very devout, practicing Muslims.
But before the first time you set foot on a majority Muslim country, were you stuck with some of these stereotypes? They're going to chop your head off. They're going to this, that, and the other.
Yeah. So especially when I was in the military, and the specialist area that I went into, the belief was not so much that Muslims were the enemy, but that they were a real and present threat. And so my initial interpretation of Islam was that it was a dangerous thing. That's the truth. But through spending a lot of time in the Middle East, through learning the languages, I saw that, wait a sec, the country that I'm coming from, Australia, is getting increasingly liberal. There's an attack on family values. There's an attack on masculinity. Whereas these so-called threat-driven countries, Muslim countries, where there's this dangerous thing called Islam, they are speaking up for traditional values. They are pro the family unit. They're rejecting modernity and liberalism. Which side is the just side here? If we're talking about the war of ideas, fifth generation warfare, if you will, which side makes sense? Which side has a more beneficial outcome for both individuals and at the society level? And so I realized that I was, if you will, ideologically on the wrong side. And I mean, part of the reason why I left the military and the work that I was doing after that was I realized that Western governments, they're not necessarily representing the best for again, both the individual and for society. Whereas when you have, especially in places like the UAE, where you have a system of law and order and a governing system that is based in religion, in faith, and in a faith that has very clear guidance as to how families should run, how men should act, how justice should be administered. That's a sustainable model with which both for individuals to flourish and society to remain cohesive and as it should be, as it naturally should be for generations to come. So I really do believe that the Middle East is the future in terms of places like the UAE. I really do believe that that's a society you'll see continue to be a safe, prosperous place for generations to come, inshallah. And I do believe, as the Tates have said, the West is a failing society. You can see it in real time, becoming more polarized, the confusion in young men and women as to do they identify as a man or a woman or a coffee cup.
Or
like
it's
becoming an absolute mess. So I genuinely believe at this point now that Islam is the only answer for both individual welfare, but also over long term, but also societal. I see no other solution to combat liberalism and modernity, which, let's be honest, is shaitan. I view that very clearly, as do the Tates.
Wow. So how long did it take you to realize, okay, Muslims weren't a threat?
I think pretty much straight away, brother. Like, again, the hospitality that I received in the Muslim world and the way...
It's such like, excuse me, like BS. I mean, it's like, you spend a little time with Muslims, you get to see the hospitality, the love,
definitely.
Right?
And especially practicing Muslims who feel an accountability for every one of their actions to a higher force and to, akhirah, the fact that they will be judged. They're people you can rely on. They're people you can trust. And the founder of liberalism, I don't want to misquote it, but he said you can't trust an atheist because they have no sense of accountability to a higher force. I'm sure I'm butchering that quote, but the essence is there. It's if somebody is their own God and their own judge, then they can do whatever they want. Whereas with a practicing Muslim, they understand on a deep level, I am held accountable to something higher than me. I think that's absolutely essential, both for the ordinary citizen, but also for leaders of countries. If you have someone leading a country and they believe they are their own source of accountability and they are their own God, for example, that's a dangerous thing. They can do whatever they want. I think they can pursue any hedonistic urges they have. They can be unscrupulous in their business dealings. They can become essentially evil beings. And I think in the West, a lot of Western government figures are driven by shaitan. I really do believe it.
Shaitan meaning the devil, the satanic forces.
100%. I think it's clear as day.
Yeah. You used to think that religion at that time, you were from what background? Were you a Christian?
So 13 years of Catholic schooling.
Catholic schooling.
Yeah. I was pretty poor family growing up, but I was pretty sharp as a kid, so I had scholarships for pretty much my whole schooling. It was all Catholic schooling. But the way Catholicism was represented, it was a chore. It wasn't something anyone was passionate about. It was just, this is what you do. And my perception of what a religion was once a week, you go to church, you sit there, you say some things, and that's it.
That was your perception. Once a week, that was it.
That's what I thought religion was. And then as I looked into Islam more and more, I'm like, hang on a sec. This is a different league in terms of depth, in terms of guidance, in terms of, exactly, structure as to how you live your life. So I'd invite anyone who is a little bit disenfranchised with religion, or they think, I don't need religion, and religion's not for me. If you're in the West and you don't fully understand Islam, you don't comprehend what a religion is, because it's a whole level of depth that people just don't realize or appreciate it even exists.
Wow. It takes me back just looking at my journey and just looking at all the different religions out there, and you can see like, okay, in one way or another, they're calling you to creation worship. But really what fascinated me, because it's not, people think religion, something you're born into, or your family, your ancestors, you just got to stick with that. It's like your DNA, you know what I mean? You can't jump from anything else. But when I really dug into Islam, just like you're seeing, it's a complete way of life. The proofs and the evidences, if you want, the Quran has it, the scientific miracles, the prophecies, everything. It's not something you blindly jump into. And that's why, you know, you have that enthusiasm, that earnest desire to want to learn more, because it makes sense. If over here you're learning that God is an animal, a human being, or these things are logical, it doesn't make sense. Naturally, you're gonna distance you. You can't find that love and desire, that passion like you have. So, what was it when you started to see the Muslims, when you started to look into Islam, when you started to what was it? Would you say that really, you know, finally did it for you after 15 years? That you finally were like, okay, this is indeed not a man-made religion, but this is indeed from the Creator of the heavens and the earth.
This is the truth. What was the final thing? I think, to be honest, it was concern for where the world was going, and the steadfast, I wouldn't even call it belief, assessment that the only solution to liberalism, to modernity, to the degeneracy we see being pushed in the West by modern culture, Islam is literally the only solution. Now, yes, there are certain religions out there, such as Orthodox, which are very strong, and they are holding their own, they're resilient, but they're not really fighting back. To me, as I've seen over the years, the only movement that's really pushing back against all this degeneracy being pushed through modern Western culture is Islam. I don't see any other entity, any other body standing up for this constant bombardment of, you know, being masculine is a bad thing, being feminine is a bad thing. You want to identify as a lamppost, that's what you should do. all this illogical, and like we laugh about it, it's damaging, right? Especially when it's pushed on the children. Show me a more effective solution than Islam. And from that logical assessment that, all right, this is the answer for both how to manage yourself as an individual and also how to push back against the nonsense, you know, how to save society, if you will. Then I started practicing, and I was like, whoa, there's a whole deeper level of benefits to this. One, the discipline, the power in resisting temptation. And when you're a man of means, alhamdulillah, I've done well. There's a lot of temptation out there, you know what I mean? Especially when it comes to casual sex or head into alcohol, all these things. It's all so accessible, you know, if you've got a certain amount of wealth. Islam is really helpful in rejecting all of that, just ignoring all of that. And also the deeper level, and that which I'm enjoying more and more is, because I'm not big on emotions, you know, like I'm an Aussie, we're not very good with emotions, but there's an emotional benefit from practicing Islam in a very earnest and literal fashion that you cannot deny. If you pray regularly, if you take Ramadan seriously, if you say, no, I'm not the sort of person who engages in hedonism and all that, you know, low energy frequency nonsense. There is health benefits, there's mental health benefits, but there's that idea of your heart being still. I genuinely feel it, and this is not an emotion that comes and goes. This is every time. Every single time I pray, at the end of the prayer, I sit there and I have nothing but gratitude for having found Islam. Nothing. I don't pray for anything for myself. You know, I pray that my family are looked after. You know, my brothers continue, you know, steadfast in their pursuit of, you know, Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path. But for me, it's nothing but gratitude. Every time I pray, I feel an overwhelming gratitude for having found Islam, and the benefits, that stillness that I can feel, that I almost feel like I'm home. This is actually something I reflected on the other day. I've been out of Australia for 15 years. I've been back 3 times. Yeah. I had this longing for heading back to Australia, even though I don't believe in, you know, the ideologies that are common in that country. The nature there, everything, always felt very grounded. And I think you'll always feel most at home where you grew up. I longed for that feeling of being home. When I go to the masjid now, I have that feeling. I have the feeling of being at home, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I mean, I haven't prayed in many other masjids around the world other than, you know, the one across from my house, but I'm pretty sure any time I go into a masjid and pray, I will have that very clear sensation of being at home. And that was something as a, you know, 15-year expat I was missing. I was longing for that. So the deeper level, the emotional sort of life fulfillment and life satisfaction that you get from practicing Islam earnestly, man, what a boost to life. What an advantage over those who don't have it. In terms of being a fulfilled, effective human. It's real.
Do you get frustrated sometimes when people make ignorant remarks, and you know this is like, you know, if they just spend a little time, you know, connecting with a Muslim, hitting the books, learning, you know, you hear certain terms. See, when you mention the masjid, I think, wow, if people would make that human connection, you go into a mosque, a masjid, you know, place of worship, no statues, no idols, no icons, nothing. It's just you're going there to thank the Creator of the heavens and earth, to worship one and only one God. praying, like when they say, have you ever heard this, Muslims are the Antichrist, but it's a pillar in Islam to believe in Christ, Jesus. He's a mighty messenger. We pray like him. It's described in the Bible that he fell on his face and prayed to God. When you go in this masjid, you're falling on your face.
100%. And that's one of the most powerful moments during sujood, I believe.
Sujood, sajda, yes.
The sensation of being in touch with something bigger than you, of putting your ego aside, putting dunya aside, and really connecting with the source from which we came, so powerful. I pity anyone who doesn't have that in their lives. I really do.
Wow. So then, the greeting, when we greet each other, peace be with you. Jesus would say, Salamu alaikum, Salamu alaikum. The fasting, that we said the prayer, everything there is just the same system, the same way of life that Jesus was living. How is it now? Because a lot of people will go ahead and have confusion around Jesus, about what is your connection now with Jesus now as a Muslim as opposed to before. Like many people don't know that you is a whole chapter in the Quran named after his blessed mother. Exactly. And you can't, if you deny him, you say one disrespectful thing, you can land yourself in the hellfire.
100%. I'd say, if anything, I feel that I have more of an understanding, more of respect for Isa, for Jesus, than I did as a Catholic, as a Christian, because I'm more motivated to read deeper, and instead of religion being a chore, it's almost a passion, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I definitely feel, I am a lot more well read on Jesus as a Muslim than I ever was as a Christian.
You said Isa.
Yeah.
Do you have any Irish background at all?
I do, yeah.
You do. In the Irish, they say Isa also.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's not interesting. I love it.
Yeah, this is his real name, because the English language didn't exist, so Jesus, you couldn't even say Jesus.
Yeah, right? I love it. There it is.
Isa.
Well, to answer your question, how do I respond to the hate that I see against Islam? I view a lot of it as ignorance. I have a policy where anyone I see...
And before you go on, because I want to make this clear, like, I get excited to work together with Christians and others, especially in these times where you have the sexualization of children, the whole things that we're talking about. But then and I always say, that we have so much in common. There's so much in common. But sometimes because of these misinformation, the programming and that, you get some of these negative things. So that's, just an introduction to...
Yeah, indeed. My red line, if it's crossed, if someone insults the Prophet, or insults, other key figures, I won't interact with them. I won't talk to them, because I would never insult someone else's religion. And to me, that's a character flaw. I don't even think it's about Islam. If you're going to insult somebody's faith, shame on you for being a person without ethics and without character, without respect. So that's my view. And so there are a lot of... I think it's cool now to sort of speak out against Islam or to question the various parts of the faith. If you want to question in a positive way, go for it. Let's have that dialogue. But if you're just there to throw out criticisms in a disrespectful manner to get attention on social media, then you're a scumbag, and I have no time for you. So, yeah, anyone who has genuine questions, I think it's a great thing. How do I respond to those insulting the religion? I'll never be in the room with them. I'll never talk to them. To me, they're not people who are worthy of interacting with in any way.
You've said on multiple occasions Islam being a system to make you the best version of yourself.
100%.
And you figured this out. You didn't take your Shahada till, it was this year, 2023, right?
Correct, yeah.
Recently, huh?
Yep.
So this is powerful. I mean, coming from someone like yourself now, you've realized that this is a system that will bring you to the best version of yourself.
100%. I think if you practice Islam earnestly, you can't help but become more disciplined. You can't help but become more calm and more focused. Again, Salah is putting all the dunya, all the world aside, and focusing on your connection with everything that's real, everything that's everlasting. A lot of people in the West, they'll talk about the benefits of meditation, or they'll talk about the benefits of fasting, or they'll talk about the benefits of trying to put your ego aside. And this is all encapsulated in a book that's hundreds and hundreds of years old. All these new age fads that think they've discovered something, it's all there and has been there for a long time. So I genuinely believe, now again, I don't want to say anything disrespectful, but I think Islam is a competitive advantage in that if you're taking your faith seriously, you are going to be more focused, more disciplined, more physically healthy, more mentally healthy than people who aren't practicing in an earnest manner. And I think, look, practicing any religion, I think, is a noble thing. However, the one with the most dogma, the one with the most guidance, the one with therefore the most benefits, we have to agree is Islam. There's so much structure and so much clear guidance on. Essentially, I see the intelligence behind all of the different elements of Islam. It is optimized in a manner to make humans the most disciplined, the most prone to reject hedonism, the most ethical in their dealings with others, the healthiest in terms of mentally, the way they perceive their human experience and live out their lives. The intelligence behind the structured living that Islam gives you is crystal clear to me, and I see it myself, I see it in other people. It results in you being a more effective human. Like if of course we don't sign up to a religion for selfish reasons, but if you were purely trying to become a better person, there's only benefit. There's only positive benefit from taking Shahada and in an earnest manner practicing Islam.
We're in a day and age where, you have it's a big industry. These you have a lot of self-help books and gurus and whatnot. And why not take this advice? Something that's been around since day one. We believe that Islam has been there since day one, because Islam simply means to submit your will to the Creator of heavens and earth. It's been there throughout time. So now, someone like you, very successful businessman, entrepreneur, and you're telling me you want to get the edge, get with Islam.
I really believe that. Like all these life hacks and all these life coaches
hacks,
and all these new age sort of things, that the people are trying to push. It's all watered down versions of something which has been written hundreds of years ago.
Watered down versions from things that have already been written hundreds of years ago.
It's so clear. And a lot of people say they found Islam in their darkest days. I found Islam in my best days. Like, alhamdulillah, I live something I've coined a custom-made reality. My family, healthy. I'm blessed with healthy children and good relationships. I have fantastic, meaningful work. I run numerous consultancy in other companies where I work with great people solving real problems. I have fantastic relationships with brothers. Materially I have more than I would ever need. I give zakat in a way that I'm quite proud of, even though I don't publicize it. I really do believe my life is ideal. Islam has added a whole nother level of fulfillment on top of that. So I couldn't be more grateful, man. And I've heard people talk about the sort of state that I am as like the dawah high, when you're really enthusiastic about it. I don't think it's a fading thing. The more I learn about Islam, the more of a dawah high I have, the more enthusiastic I become. And those moments where you're reading something and you go, that click moment, that makes sense. So for example, one quick one. For the longest of time throughout my life, I realized the underlying intent with which you approach an activity will directly impact the outcome. For example, if you're trying to get money and your underlying intent is you're desperate and you're coming from a place of scarcity, you do anything you can, you might get that money, but it's going to be a very rocky road. Whereas if your underlying intent for getting money is one of abundance and one of gratitude and one of I'm going to benefit the people I work with, so it's win-win. I'm not going to take from people. You will get that money in a much more steady and more abundant manner. That underlying intent is so important. Then in Islam, I read about something called niyyah. And the fact that we have a concept, whereas the intent with which you approach something, even, when you go and pray, you set your niyyah, you set the intent. And I'm like, hang on. This is something that's written hundreds of years ago that took me 35 odd years to figure out. If only I'd read it earlier. And I have dozens and dozens of examples like that, where beliefs that I'd figured out through human experience, I find represented in texts written hundreds of years ago. That the amount of times I've had those moments where I'm like, that's what I thought, and here it is in this book, is remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. It's incredibly energizing, and I don't think my dawah high will ever fade. I think the more I learn, the more enthusiastic I'll get.
That's what people, they really get amazed at the fitra, the human inclination. Islam comes and it fits like a glove. And if it hasn't been tainted so much. And do you see now, I've heard you talk about this, because a lot of people go away from man-made religions. You see people, a lot of different strange incantations, superstitions, worshiping the creation, things that just don't make sense. So people go away from religion, and a lot of people turn towards atheism. And you talk about this, them shooting themselves in the foot.
100%. And I see...
And how do we get them now, again...
I think it's tricky, because a lot of people, when they take these, whether it's atheistic beliefs or liberal beliefs, even though those belief systems are clearly not helping them in life, they have that ego attachment. I'm an atheist, therefore, I'm going to justify it in my mind. I think the ultimate question to anyone who says they're an atheist, how's that working out for you? How does your view, your atheistic belief system, benefit your life? Because I can talk for hours, and I happily will and have done, and we're doing right now. I can talk for hours about the benefits that Islam has brought me, both in terms of making me more fulfilled as a person, making me more disciplined and effective and able to better serve, my family, my colleagues, my society. What does atheism do to make you a better person? How does it give you increased discipline? How does it give you increased energy to really go and be the best human that you can be, because one day you will be judged. It doesn't bring any of those benefits. So again, to any atheist out there, my simple question for you is, how is that working out for you? How is that benefiting your life? Because personally, I can talk for hours about how Islam has and is benefiting my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's logical. I mean, if you go ahead and live Islam, like you said, you get all these benefits. Over here on the other side, you're probably somebody who's not too happy. You got that void in your heart. And at the end, if Islam, we know it's true, then all these, what's going to happen? If the death comes, it's too late to go back. Hellfire opens up, paradise opens up. You missed out 100%. On getting the best of this life and the best in the hereafter.
100%. There it is. And I think the atheists will always argue, oh, but, you know, hellfire can't be proven, these sorts of things. What can be proven is how your belief systems are represented in you as a person. Show me an atheist who's genuinely happy. I don't, okay, maybe some are, but exceptions to the rule don't negate the rule. Most of the atheists that I've seen don't seem like very fulfilled people to me. They don't have that sense of community that we get with the Ummah. They don't have healthy dogma. Humans need dogma. We need guidance for life from somewhere. Now, you're either going to get that from a religion, or you'll get it from modern day culture, astaghfirullah, you know, or you'll get that from a government, if it's like a communist system, and you must, your God should be the leader of the country and so on. But either way, humans crave dogma from something. And again, if you are your own God, if you are not accountable to anything, why not engage in hedonism? Why not take drugs? Why not engage in superficial sex? You know, if there's no judgment or no accountability. Whereas with something like Islam, or you know, the religions of the book, so to speak, practicing them gives you clear guidance with which to live a good, positive life as a human. Why would you not choose that? You really think you have the ego as an atheist to think that you can choose a better way to live than something chosen by 2 billion people, which has very clear benefits in every area of your life? All right, fine. But again, my question to you, our atheist friends out there, how is that working out for you?
How's that working out for you?
That's the question.
Yeah, you said something also, if you can unpackage this. You said if Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was alive today, he'd probably get canceled.
Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, had an Instagram page, he would have been cancelled hard. Nowadays, modern day culture is, it's degenerate. It's anti-family, it's anti-men being traditional, looking after those they care about. You know, it's anti-women looking after themselves. Like, modern day culture is such a terrible place to find that dogma, that guidance for life. Once you break people out of the matrix, what do you give them? I see no other answer than Islam. If Prophet Muhammad, wouldn't that be an interesting phenomena to observe? So the way that modern culture, and we see it, the way Shaitan has absolutely taken over all the information channels. Again, whether it's censorship by Western governments, or we see Hollywood movies pushing certain agendas, Netflix, social media. The other day on Spotify, I put a gym playlist on when I was going to work out. This was before I took Shahada. Yeah. And after 5 songs, I had to turn it off, because in this gym playlist, every single song was about women, was about being a simp. Oh, baby, give me one more chance. I couldn't even work out without this programming being pushed on me. So the idea that you can counter all of that without some kind of shield or some kind of structure, which is what Islam gives us, I think it's a fallacy. I think the assault of these satanic agendas being pushed on us from every direction. I put it to you that Islam is probably the only, or it's definitely the most effective way to counter all that, if not the only way to do it in the modern age. And that's, again, a big part of the reason why I took Shahada was, as an individual, I know that I'm limited. I know that, there are such things as temptation. I know that there is programming from every angle that, through in the Western world as to be the sort of man I don't want to be. Whereas if you choose Islam and you follow it in an earnest manner, that is a genuine shield. That is a superpower against all this wokeism, this liberalism, this degeneracy, this temptation. To me, I see it as a very obvious, very easy choice. I really do.
You were speaking of Shahada, and for people that don't know, Shahada is what someone says to enter into Islam, declaring that there's nothing worthy of worship except the one Creator, God Almighty, Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger. This would automatically include all the preceding messenger, Jesus being one of them, Moses, Abraham, and all the ones that came. It just makes beautiful sense, that chronological order. It was the same way of life, not a new religion here, there, and everywhere. It's the same way of life. So now when you took your Shahada, you were actually that excited that you would go ahead and you were sharing giving dawah to Andrew. Was it
Yeah.
in the early time or last year? Or
yeah, I mean, for years he and I have been talking about Islam, and for years he's been asking, like, Tate, both of them, Andrew and Tristan, very deep thinkers, but behind the social media, perception of guys living large with cars and all these things, they're very deep thinkers. At the end of the day, when work was done, or when we were sitting on the yachts or the jets, we would have those big question discussions, what are we here for? Which religion is going to last? All these sorts of things.
Purpose of life questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And for me, having lived in the Middle East for such a long time, I was always representing Team Islam, even though I wasn't Muslim at that point.
Yeah.
So Tate actually took his Shahada before me. I was surprised.
So Andrew Tate took his Shahada before you?
I was surprised he didn't tell me he was going to do it, because I would have been like, bro, let's do it together. Because I told him, and I told everyone I was planning to. I was just researching more and more first. And I talked to him. I messaged him and said, hey, man, congrats on taking Shahada. What was the final push for you to do that?
What was the final push?
And he said two things. He said, one, there are zero downsides, only positives. And two, it's the only solution. It is the only answer to stand up to the way humanity is going, and the fact that Shaitan has essentially taken over Western culture.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So then you went on, you took your Shahada. It was in the, you mentioned that such masculine men, you see them getting teary-eyed.
Yeah, indeed. So that was one thing that I found, like, for me...
That was when you took your Shahada, right?
Yeah,
the
indeed.
sheikh,
the sheikh in the local mosque. Now, he's a serious guy. Like, he's probably got hands. He's that guy who's got that masculine presence. And can you imagine how many Shahadas he would have, facilitated throughout the years? Probably hundreds, if not thousands. And when I took Shahada, I saw a tear roll down his cheek. Now, he grabbed, his headpiece and he wiped it away. And I was struck. I was like, here's a guy who literally is intimidating in how masculine he is, but he's shedding a tear about the beauty of someone joining his faith. And that to me was a really interesting moment. And I've seen, and I think it's a tricky thing in today's day and age, how to be a man. I mean, we're under assault from so many different directions. The Gillette ad being, boys will be boys. All of a sudden, it's bad to be a boy. Toxic masculinity, all these sorts of things. Within Islam, you must be strong. You must be stoic. You must, role model your own life after the Prophet, who was a very masculine man. But also, he was very emotionally intelligent. He was very caring. He was very just. And I think any man who is confused about how to be a good man and what positive masculinity is today will do well to have a look at Islam, have a look at the example of the Prophet. That, to me, is the best way to express masculinity in its most positive and most beneficial form. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's very needed in today's day and age when masculinity is under assault from pretty much every corner you can imagine.
Do you think this also helps in people making their decision? Also, you have a lot of people that say, okay, they live a certain lifestyle, and they see now Islam is very practical. And let's say you have men, right? And a man now, he's used to, let's say he's living a certain lifestyle and he's got a whole access of whatever he wants. And now Islam, not only being a structure, how to worship your creator, how to deal in business, how to deal with your family, everything is laid out. Blueprint, how to go to the bathroom, every detail. But now, also the struggle now that a person might have is saying, okay, now I got to be in religion and I can only be here with, have one family. But Islam also, did you see in this environment where, for Andrew Tate, for instance, who's used to, let's say, a previous life, he's got the whole door, whatever he wants with the counterpart, right? Female part. Here, Islam given the open avenue where he can have up to 4 families.
Yep. If he has the ability to both lead, not just in terms of finances, but also in terms of that patriarchal leadership and time into each family unit.
Does that thing play a role also? That helps to, like, this is practical. It makes sense.
Yep. I think I've always said, even 10 years ago, I used to say that Islam is the religion that's closest to biology, the closest to the natural way of living. And throughout history, and indeed in many cultures today outside of the West, you'll see that, the big boy, the village elder, looking after numerous families because he has the ability to do so. The idea that that's somehow a negative thing, or that those in the West can judge that as a bad thing, I'm sorry. In what universe, in what reality is anyone in the West in the moral high ground? Have a look at the West. It's just nonsense. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's...
Because I've heard you talk about this also.
Yeah, indeed. I think if a man has not okay. Obviously, you need your money right, but if you have the ability to lead multiple families, and it's a challenging thing, obviously,
Big responsibility.
Being a good father, being a good husband, being that individual who is attentive enough to really take care of so many different people. If you have the ability to do that, I think it's a very positive thing. In a world where everyone's saying, "Where have all the good men gone?" Obviously, there's a shortage of good men who can lead families, be good husbands, be good fathers. If you're the sort of man who has it together enough in life, has experienced enough, has built enough of wealth and so on, and you can be that good man for multiple wives, for multiple families, it's a beautiful thing. It's a noble thing, and so I think it's fantastic that Islam has that codified as a sacred thing. And I think, to be honest, one of the challenges you see in the West is the breakup of the family unit.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a system through which good men can provide for, lead, care for multiple family units, that's solving a problem that we see in a very direct manner. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's something that I hope that the Ummah stands up for, because I see it's under attack in certain countries. I see that it's illegal in the UK, I think, to have multiple wives. But you can identify as a lamppost and you can shop your private parts off as a kid, but you can't look after multiple families? Nonsense. What utter illogical rubbish.
There was a story of Iman, I don't know if this is a joke, but a sheikh was having multiple families, and then the authorities came and they said, "Hey, we heard you got, you have multiple wives here," and he was about to be in some trouble. And he was like, "No, these are my girlfriends." They said, "Okay, no problem." And they left.
Oh, wow. Isn't that interesting?
I think it's a joke, but
isn't that funny? So if you want to have superficial intimacy with multiple families, that's fine. Whereas if you want to be a responsible man who looks after multiple wives, then that's all of a sudden illegal. It's, man, anyone in the West who thinks that, the Western moral system is anyway, above that of the traditional values of Islam, they're just kidding themselves. It's clearly they are on the losing side of history, and time will show that. Mm-hmm.
Inshallah. So a few more questions. I'm really enjoying talking with you. Seeing you come from, it just reminds me, I'm a little bit older than you, and just looking back and seeing my lifestyle and just coming, and that zeal and passion that you're, just accepting Islam, it reminds me also of my journey, and it's amazing. And one of the key reasons I started this program was because I saw all the different misconceptions, you see in the media, and I saw what Islam promoted: justice, peace, mercy, love, all these things. But the media is having the people believe that it's about terrorism, something barbaric, backwards. But, to bring on these stories, and just another one like yourself, someone who's very successful, someone who's, telling people, if you want to edge, get with Islam now. And
it's a competitive advantage in life. And I don't mean that it, in terms of, like, ideally, all of humanity is lifted up. But there are a lot of people who just will never choose Islam. For those who are practicing Muslims, your life is going to be better than theirs. That's the stone cold reality. So, I really do see it as a positive thing. And just one thing I'd love to throw in, I've seen some articles lately saying that, a lot of men with conservative values are turning to Islam, and this is concerning. I'm like, hang on a sec, that's a good thing. If you're a man with conservative values, you think the family unit's sacred, you think the traditional gender roles are positive and should be protected, and you see that same sort of thinking is codified and resilient and protected within Islam, then choose Islam. It's a positive. It's a good thing. The idea that the West is trying to say, this is concerning that men with conservative values are finding Islam, I think it's the only way to really protect traditional values and a traditional way of life.
I mean, what do you get if you break it down? Okay, Islam, real simple. You believe in one and only one God, worshiping the Creator, not the creation, live a morally upright life.
Because you'll be accountable.
You'll be accountable, so there's accountability. And I remember you mentioning something about life, with that over your head, a day of judgment. It holds one to a certain accountability of oneself. And without that, it's
on a moment-to-moment basis.
Yeah.
You don't have time to waste with hedonism or drugs or superficial sex. You've got one chance to live on a daily basis. Sirat al-Mustaqim, live on that straight path. Don't get pulled off it by all the... And that's the thing. My favorite line in all of Salah is A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from Satan the accursed. Tell me that isn't the plight of modern men, especially young men today. Tell me that they don't need some kind of assistance in resisting temptation, resisting all that liberal programming, resisting all the, hey, masculinity is bad, traditional gender roles are bad. If you have Islam, that is a shield, it's a superpower against all of that negative programming, against wokeism, against liberalism, against temptation, against hedonism. I think young men, especially today, in today's day and age, where there's endless porn on your phone. There's drugs accessible, there's endless superficial sex accessible. Young men of today, especially, if they want to get the most out of their human experience, day-to-day basis, I think they need to seriously consider Islam, because how else are you going to stay on that straight path? Sirat al-Mustaqim.
Wow. What do you think is going to happen now with our brother, Andrew Tate?
And I genuinely believe that Allah is the best of planners, and whatever happens to me, regardless of whether I am martyred, regardless of whether they put a bullet in my brain.
What's your feel now with everything? Because now they can only hold him until the end of this month. Is that correct? So do you feel they're going to let him go? They're going to try to bring some charge? What do you see happening?
I think in an ideal world, based on not just the lack of hard evidence, but also the lack of logic, but also there's a word, exculpatory evidence. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The evidence which shows that they are not guilty, such as these two main complainants conspiring and saying, hey, let's go to Netflix. In an ideal world, all of that would be considered and they'll be let go. However, this is a big public affairs spectacle on a global level. Just letting them go now, I'd have to think would involve a lot of people losing face. And so I think the agencies involved, the individuals involved, they have a very clear incentive not to let the Tate brothers out, which concerns me. Again, if you look at everything in a purely objective manner, of course they should be let go, or even just through the lens of basic logic. However, this is at the level where if they are let go, some people are going to lose jobs, some people are going to look bad, and those people therefore will do what people do and look after themselves and try and keep this spectacle going. I have to believe the truth will come out in the end. I cannot see any way that they actually get put away for this, because again, if through and Romania is still an EU country, they have judicial process that should be followed. I understand that it takes time. I'd like it to be a little more efficient, to be honest. But I understand they have process to go through. If that process is followed properly, then they will see the massive holes in these allegations. They'll see the evidence that shows that the main complainants were conspiring to try and get on Netflix and all these sorts of things. And they'll see on a purely logical level, when you're pushing a Bugatti, you don't need to try and exploit someone to take their TikTok money. It just doesn't make sense. So I have to believe that this process will probably be dragged out for some time, because again, people, certain entities involved don't want to lose face. But I have to believe the truth will win out, inshallah.
Do you see now, the confusion here is that I think because you have different jurisdictions, even in states, and then you have certain things that are allegedly done in that these victims are in UK, for example, and then you have this is in Romania, so a complete outside, not just jurisdiction, but outside a totally different country. How does Romania, and then they actually were found not guilty in UK, so that's the irony here. It just doesn't make, just doesn't make sense.
As I understand it, the UK claims are civil, so that's just people trying to get money. I understand it's not criminal. Whereas the Romanian piece of it is criminal. So that's the one that matters. Defeating that is the one that matters. I would like to believe that perhaps this will be dragged out for another months rather than years, and then they'll be released. However, I am concerned that it's dragged out this long without charges being laid. And as I said, there's all that evidence showing that the main complainants were conspiring to lie, yet they're still restricted and not able to move out of their homes. So I want to believe in the legal system, but wow, why is it taking so long? It is a concern in that sense.
I don't know if you know Amir Junaid Muhaddith, formerly known as Loon.
You kind of look a little bit different to me today than how we've been seeing you in those pop videos. Is Loon still in there somewhere?
Loon is working his way out of my system.
From Bad Boy Records. He was with Puff Daddy.
Okay.
He had something similar, and I was talking to him the other day. He'd like to actually talk with Andrew, because he had a similar situation.
Interesting.
He was a very famous hip hop artist. You can look him up, and he accepted Islam. And then shortly after he accepts Islam, he gets hits on some conspiracy charge. He didn't even do the crime, but he was now years ago something came up, and then boom, they locked him up and whatnot. So do you think there was any reasoning here? He ends up leaving Romania, going to Dubai. Shortly after, he says La ilaha illallah, he accepts Islam, and now he comes back, boom, he's in jail. Do you think now there's any anything to that because of his conversion to Islam, they
I think
just play into it at all.
I think it may have been one factor of numerous, but to address that point by raising another one, I've seen there's even a documentary coming out trying to question Andrew's faith, which of course is haram, but there are some kafirs who are pushing that, so they're going to do what they're going to do.
That's something they're working on? That's going to come out?
Yeah, I actually spoke to them the other day. The idea that, and their claim is that...
You spoke to them, Jorge?
Yeah, I spoke to these documentary makers, just to stand up for Andrew. The idea that Andrew reverted to Islam for clout, first of all, the most Google man in the world doesn't need more clout. Let's be real here. And the idea that it was some sort of strategic decision, if you're living in Romania, a strongly Orthodox country, is it going to be beneficial to convert to Islam? Of course not. And also, let's be honest, there's a lot of ill will and a lot of incorrect misperceptions about Islam that you then take on once you become Muslim. I've told people I'm Muslim, and I've seen very strange reactions, and I know that people are saying certain things. I don't care, I'm fine. But for a lot of people, it does affect them negatively.
It does,
and so the idea that becoming Muslim is some sort of strategic move, there's a lot of potential downsides that come with it. And one of them could have been that Andrew wasn't viewed as favorably in a heavily Orthodox country, most definitely. I don't think it was necessarily a driving reason behind his incarceration, but I think it may definitely have been a factor.
Matrix. We've translated it, me and one of my guests, Hassan, we translate it as the satanic forces. How would you translate the Matrix?
So my view is that, because I again, after the military, I worked in areas where I got to see, behind the scenes and see how the world works. I think there's many competing matrices. I think there's the corporate matrix, which essentially wants people to be sheep and buy what they're told to buy. I think there's the various government matrices out there that realize there's a lot more of the little person, the citizens, than there are the leaders. So we need to keep them docile and keep them easily controlled, scared. That's the fear levers that are pulled, to keep the sheep docile and easily controlled. And I think then you have other matrices, such as individual government entities that have certain agendas. They want to have PR wins, publicity wins. They want to show, for example, I'd say that Romania wanting to show that it's a good country by locking up a guy who's hated on the internet, perhaps is a form of the matrix as well. But I think the underlying push behind the matrix is indeed shaitan. I think it's how can we push people off the straight path? How can we make humanity more prone to indulging in temptation? More accepting of hedonism, accepting of perversion. And you can see, and especially in Western culture, the way these certain agendas are being pushed, even on children. That's very clear to me that there's a strong satanic motivator or underlying intent behind a lot of the modern day culture, which is referred to as the Matrix.
What was your thoughts now on him being Andrew and Tristan being released on the date that the Matrix was?
Yeah, wasn't
released?
That interesting? Again,
what do you think of that?
I think
so. That's legitimate. That the dates are. That's when the movie was released. That's no conspiracy theory.
It's proven. I think I'd have to view that as a coincidence more than anything. But also, I'm still reading, man. I'm still trying to interpret these things. Is it Qadr Allah in some way? I'm not sure. There's a lot of meaning here, and I think at this point, Andrew Tate is more than just an individual who says controversial things online. He's a cultural icon, and he is the leader, or you could say the preeminent leader, if not one of the top leaders, against liberalism, against the satanic forces that are looking to destroy the family unit, looking to destroy traditional gender roles, looking to demasculinize men, and also take away feminine tendencies from women. Women suffer a lot from all this stuff too, because they're being shamed for being feminine or for wanting to have traditional gender roles. So everybody loses. I think it's very clear that Andrew Tate is now a cultural icon leading the fight against this push for degeneracy and wokeism and liberalism, and it's a lot bigger than one man at this point.
It's interesting you mentioned how this is hurting women. I mean, a woman just wants to go win a tennis competition, and here she goes, has a man jump in, and he takes the lead, right?
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? But feminism as a movement is shown to damage women as well. The more feminist a country is, the higher percentage of women taking antidepressants, the higher level of divorce rates, the higher, on a logical level, the higher levels of conflict in a relationship. If man and woman are competing or both trying to do 50-50, it's never going to be as cohesive and mutually beneficial as man and woman, having polarity and complementing each other and living as a team in life. So obviously feminism crushes women in its current form. Of course, back in the day, it's necessary in numerous ways, you could argue, to ensure that women have rights. But in the West nowadays, what rights do women have that men don't have? If anything, it's flipped. Look at paternity court and the way women are favoured, and so many men out there not even having access to their own children. So the idea that feminism is anything but a female supremacy movement, which ultimately damages women and men and families, I think it's very clear, and I think that's the beauty of Islam. You can have traditional values. You can say no. I think it's healthy when a man is doing traditionally masculine things. I think it's healthy when a woman is doing traditionally female things, and I don't think it's healthy for children to be told they can identify as a lamppost. You're allowed to say that as a Muslim. You can't as a non-Muslim in the West. You'll get cancelled, right?
I can't. I'm always thinking I can't believe we've even gotten here.
That's wild, man.
Now that was something that was just so obvious. It was something so scientific, biology, everything. It's in your DNA. I mean, everything is there. And now they're convincing people that a man can be a woman, a woman can be a man, and
tell me that's not one of the many signs that Akhira is coming closer, man. We see
judgment,
it. It's a real perversion in real time. And I mean, I'm not in a position where I can quote.
But what's Andrew was on the interview. He identified as a she.
Yeah, that's right.
He was joking, yeah.
Hey, I don't know. I mean, who are we to question, man?
No. Yeah.
And that's the thing. The hypocrisy of the left, it's the only thing they're good at. They are so openly hypocritical. And, I mean, again, the various leftists who've come after Tate, their lives look miserable. They are timid men. They are disrespected by women. That often they don't have much success in any area of life, and they're going to judge men like us with traditional values. Again, how's it working out for you? To all the leftists, to all the woke types out there, how's that working out for you? How's the quality of your relationships? How calm and harmonious is your house? How fulfilled are you as a man if you are walking through life thinking that being a man equals toxic masculinity? It's clear as day. But these leftists, man, they're pretty good at being hypocritical. I'm amazed at their tendency to subscribe to wokeism and liberalism and degeneracy and hedonism, live miserable lives as a result, but still defend their beliefs. It's mind-bending to me. It's incredible.
Something current that's going on, Trump. What do you think? Are you following what's going on? He just got...
So, yeah, I spent a lot of time in countries where... throughout Africa, Middle East, where governments were not even trying to pretend that they were just, and they were doing whatever they needed to do to keep power. You can see that happening now in the US. This is not justice. This is clear smoke and mirrors and propaganda and nonsense for certain power players to keep their power. It's so obvious. You can have somebody like Trump facing jail time, whereas there's a whole bunch of allegations about the Biden family, without getting too political. Where's the media coverage on that? As I understand it, there are images of Hunter Biden having sex with underage children.
Wow.
Where's the mainstream coverage of that? We know he's a heavy drug user. We know there's a bunch of ties in between Biden and Ukraine and all sorts of bribery allegations. Where are the investigative experts in the mainstream looking into that? Again, I think that's the danger with the West. I don't think the Cold War ever ended, to be honest. I think the fight against socialism and communism, or at least in its modern day form, champagne socialism. You know that term? The idea of someone saying, "Oh, I'm a socialist," while they're flying their private jet. It's just nonsense. I think that's a form of control. I think when you look at a country like China with its social credit system, where they have that perfect blend of, we are capitalists and we're making money, but hey, we're also communists, so therefore we can control the people in the optimal manner. I think that's what you see happening more and more in the West. That's why you see this push for champagne socialism, for leftist values, for essentially a communist-style state that says, again, we look at Stalin's head of security. He was famous for saying, "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime." The idea that a communist government can pick anyone and can find him guilty of anything and therefore lock him up. That's the same playbook we see being used against Trump in order for the leftists to maintain power. It's so blatant for those who've spent time in the sort of countries outside of the West that I've spent time in. But here, unfortunately, I mean, the majority of the population is sheep. That push to demasculinize, that push to make them, compliant, feeble, scared little sheep humans, it's worked. And so people are buying into this obviously nonsense and undemocratic push to lock up a man like Trump, when you can see plenty of more glaring issues that should result in consequences on the Biden side of things. But this is what communists do, man. This is what the left does. I'm not sure whether I should talk politics so openly, but that's my beliefs on these things, man.
So, in summary now, we've talked about a lot of different things, and people can go ahead and get that edge like you talked about, that's helped you, and whatever someone has done in the past, you know, that's the beautiful thing. When someone comes into Islam, they have a fresh, clean slate, and you want someone who's going to help better society, and you want to feed that so they can become a better instrument to push good, right? So just something for people to think about, you know, the opponents to Andrew or whoever, and we're rooting for the good. For I hope people are rooting good for me, for you, for all of us. We want to see peace established on earth, justice. We want to see good families. We want people to be honest. We want people to be just. We don't want to push evil agendas, promiscuity, fornication, all these, you know, anything that will destroy society, like you know, that dark hole that's out there. Providing for your families, taking care of your responsibilities, you know, being a responsible human being. And these are the things that will help society be a better place. 100%. And these are a lot of the things that now you're seeing that Islam, it coincides with Islam. So what would you say is a summary now? What would you, how would you close this off to somebody who's out there, and you hear these terms misogynistic, you hear these terms, you know, anti-women, you hear these terms, you know, all these bad images that come with a certain person's name and that we brought up, or Islam also.
What I'd say is, I'll speak to the men out there, because I'm a man, and you know, that's my lived experience. If you're a man, especially in the West, and you have certain beliefs, such as traditional gender roles are important, such as a man, it's your duty to be strong mentally and physically, to provide, protect. That if you are that high-level man, you deserve a high-level woman who is supportive, who is caring, who brings harmony and peace into your home. There's nothing wrong with that. You are complete. You have every right to believe in those traditional beliefs. You have every right to live according to those traditional beliefs. And Islam will give you a superpower, if you will, a shield against the liberal degeneracy, the wokeism, the push of all these agendas that you see against you and your family members. If you're a man who has old school beliefs and you want to be able to live by them in a way you can be proud of and in a way that's easier to defend, then there is correlation, as you said, with the faith of Islam. And I'd recommend that every man with traditional gender norms or traditional family beliefs and so on have a look at Islam, because not only will it help you protect and live by your beliefs, it'll also strengthen them, and it'll make you even more of that provider, even more of that protector, even more of that good, noble man living a life you can be proud of. That is the benefit of Islam. So I'd say to anybody, especially those in the West, who feel that their traditional beliefs are under attack, the ultimate traditional belief system, if you will, lies in that book, the Quran. The ultimate code with which to live life as a good man with traditional values, who's prepared to stand up and protect, you know, those he loves and the beliefs that he has and his brothers and so on. That is all codified within the system of life that is Islam. So I think every man, especially in the West, would do well to consider Islam, to look into it with an open mind, because my goodness, having recently reverted, it is such an empowering approach to both understand, you know, the big questions, you know, what are we here for, to understand the human experience, but also a system with which to live out your days, knowing you are the best human you can be. It's an absolute superpower. I hope it's appropriate to say it like that.
Yeah, it's the what?
The fact that it's a superpower, living by the system, the
Absolutely,
codes in Islam, it just gives you so much motivation.
It's a way of life. You can live your life. You can how to live your life, how to run a family. Your life even was a superpower of a world at one point. Yes, it has everything laid out.
And also, just one final piece. If we're talking about role models, I think we should all be very careful of what we consume nowadays, or who we look up to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they'll look up to, say, a basketball player, or they'll look up to an actor, or they'll look up to an influencer. Heaven forbid, astaghfirullah. If you want to find a role model who's someone who you can really say, you know, that individual, that's a man I can respect, have a look at the life of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. If we look at all different areas, from being a leader in combat, you know, back in the day where it was swords, you're not behind a sniper rifle with swords and spears, it's face to face, leading multiple families, all the challenges that come from that, and you can learn about, you know, the challenges you face with that, with business, with being persecuted, with facing, you know, real strong obstacles in life, but staying not just masculine and strong and resilient, but also very empathetic and very just and very caring. If you're looking for a real role model in life, forget the influencers, forget the sports stars, read about the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. That's an individual who deserves respect. That's a man. That's someone who you can look at and go, you know what, in all areas of life, that's somebody who I would like to role model after, who I'd like to emulate. I'm sick of all these modern day influences that people are looking at and consuming their content. How about consuming that content? It's going to do a lot better for your life.
Michael H. Hart, the famous historian, he ranked Prophet Muhammad as the most influential man in history. Why not look at his life? You read about Genghis Khan, you read about Alexander the Great. Look into Prophet Muhammad. Besides what you read from all the Islamophobes and all the hate industry out there, look into it. That's beautiful advice.
What's a better place to seek, or even to place your attention? Our time and attention is a finite resource. Why watch all these modern day influencers who are famous for the sake of being famous when you can read about something that 2 billion people have chosen as their truth? When you can read about, as you said, the most influential man of all time. That's a role model that I think especially young men today should be consuming and focusing their attention on, rather than consuming all that influencer-driven nonsense that's out there.
You know, I'm sorry. I keep wanting to ask you more.
Please, I got nothing but time, brother.
Yeah, because when you talk about influencers, it's such a sad, and it's a sad and obvious hypocrisy when you see people like the BBC and others, and you got just blatant misogyny coming out of like people like Drake, for instance, and many of these other hip hop stars, and the disgusting thing that they talk about women, using them like cattle, and they just like, you know, disgusting words that come out of their mouth. Why aren't you trying to shut down the hip hop industry or the you know, rap or you know, people who sing such disgusting words? If you have such a high moral compass, moral high ground, where's the?
For me, I think it's a very valid point. I think the only outcome that you can come.
Have you read some of these statistics? I had a psychologist on, Dr. Leonard Sachs, very famous psychologist, and he was like, man, the harm that this is doing to
hip-hop culture has a really dark edge to it. I think the only outcome you can come to for a very sort of detailed assessment is there are certain power players out there that want.
And look, I don't mean cut you. I used to wake up. I used to listen to hip hop, all this stuff. I used to like, you know, being in the music myself. That was just right.
I think it's that's what I love about Islam. It defines clearly and identifies that there's evil out there. There is shaitan. There are evil forces trying to, you know, keep you off the straight path. Without Islam, people aren't really aware of that. So you know, before you took you know, the faith that we have really seriously, you were working in a nightclub or in the music industry. At that time, you thought there was nothing wrong with that, right? As most people wouldn't.
It was.
Whereas when you are a practicing Muslim, you understand, no, evil does exist in this world, and I need to take certain steps to offset that. Otherwise, Satan will draw me into ways of living that are you know, less than ideal, are unhealthy. But to your point, I think if you look at the chessboard of life clearly and objectively, you cannot help but come to the assessment that there are certain entities out there, very powerful entities, that want to disrupt the natural order, that want to lead humans into temptation, that want to pull people off the straight path, want men to be weak, want women to be masculine and unhappy, whether it's corporates trying to just make people deeply unhappy inside so they go and buy more stuff to, you know, feel good, whether it's governments wanting to break up the family unit and take out religion so that the only source of guidance that you have is the government. You know, modern day culture pushing certain objectives that are driven by real degeneracy and perversion to essentially weaken humans, to weaken family units. It's all about control, and I think the reason why we see such consistent push against that which is natural, that which is normal, against, you know, cohesive family units, against religion, is because if you are a God-fearing man with a good family who's, you know, inside feeling fulfilled, you don't need to go and buy an iPhone that's the latest, you know, edition, you know, with the color to match your personality in order to feel good. You don't need to listen to the fear campaigns that governments are pushing out to try and control you. If you are a good God-fearing man with a strong family behind you and strong brothers, that is against the intent that we see of the various power players out there to make humans into easily controlled sheep. I think that's why it is the way it is.
When you go, even in this country, when you go back in time, the more you go back in time, you have less. You have people eating real food. I'm really into nutrition.
Awesome.
You got people holding on to family values, and you have so much more. I mean, mental illness was almost something that was non-existent. You know, it was there, but I mean, it was skyrocketing now. I mean,
100%. And again, if someone is mentally ill, then you could argue that they're not going to pose any sort of threat to the powers that be. What is dangerous is cool, calm, capable, collected, united brothers who have, you know, specific skills that can challenge governments. You know, think about it. If you are the elite, you understand that there's a lot more of the people outside the gates than there are of you. It is in your best interest to have the elite as weak and malleable and controllable and as sheepish as possible. We see that playing out in real time. It's, to me, that's why certain agendas are being pushed on children and all this. If you're encouraging young boys to be so demasculinated to the point they want to cut off their own natural God-given sex organs. Is that not peak control over the masculine? Is that not peak control over humanity? It's scary stuff, man.
I saw Andrew doing an interview, and then they were having one of these guys on, and he was like, oh, my brain. It was like, they're infecting me.
I use the term minor attracted person, or MAP, in the title and throughout the book for multiple reasons. First of all, because I think it's important to use terminology for groups members of that group want others to use for them. And MAP advocacy groups like Before You Act have advocated for use of the term MAP.
Programming, they're trying to put it in my brain.
They've advocated for it primarily because it's less stigmatizing than other terms like pedophile.
This is haram! Haram! Send her to Saudi. Let her repeat this shit. Haram. We need the will of God. We need Allah. Listen, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And you see that it's really he just really beautifully explained it in his humorous way. And just back to this, it's interesting because I saw also Drake, an interview. He was talking about when he was questioned about some of the misogynistic songs and all that. He was like, it's just art.
Lyrics can really be demeaning to women.
A sort of fine line between demeaning and fun and wit. We have a song like I Just Wanna F Every Girl in the World. That's one of our biggest songs.
Just this, that, and the other. But then the hypocrisy, someone from before who did these things, obviously now we're changing better with Islam, but just the hypocrisy. Anyways, so back to this where you have, to go get a tattoo, you have to be a certain age. What is it in Australia?
I imagine it'd be 18.
18.
Yep.
To go ahead, and even when you want to take your child to go and get a passport, you need both parents here in America, in Chicago. You got two parents if he's under 16, right?
Interesting.
Or 18. And the list goes on. To drink alcohol, what is it, 21?
18 in Australia.
18, I think here's 21 or 18. The enlist in the military, what is it now?
18.
18.
Yeah.
The list, R-rated movie, what is it, 17?
Yeah, true.
Explicit content and songs, you can't literally purchase. They sell it, but smoking. But what you just said, I mean, it's just amazing that they're pulling this over your eyes right in front of you, that a child at such a young age, they're getting him set up for the puberty blockers. And at 4 or 5, I think they just put something, this is where you had people protesting that they're showing these sexually exploited content at such a young age. And then at another age, getting them with the counselors, they don't have to tell the parents to get them on puberty blockers.
You can bring in male strippers to dance and drag, but you can't bring in female strippers because that would be inappropriate.
That's another thing. You can't take a child to a strip club, but you could bring the drag show to the elementary school.
As long as the drag people are men, essentially,
yeah. And then New York spending I don't know how much, $250,000 taxpayer money for this stuff.
Yeah, man,
that's
wild.
a whole different topic. But this is what's happening. This is the Matrix.
Yeah, 100%. Why would Western governments care so much about such a small part of the population?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I've never met somebody who identifies as transgender in my life, other than once in Thailand years ago when there was a lady at a hotel reception, then she spoke in a deep voice, I realized it was a man.
Yeah.
So in 40 years, I've met one individual who is in that demographic. Why, currently, as we see, every post coming out from the official White House or Joe Biden Twitter pretty much is addressing that very small demographic? Because there's an agenda here. And from what I understand, there's a growing body of individuals who are lesbian, gay or bi, who are saying, no, we don't want anything to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
We see that this is purely the latest agenda with which to control the masses and to push certain agendas and to weaken family values and traditional values and so on. And we don't want to, even gay communities are saying, we don't want anything to do with this. We see the way this is being abused by the governments. It's so clear. And in a few years, there'll be something else that they're pushing. This is all about control. That's all it is.
So you need Islam.
That's 100%.
We go back again.
There is a shield against all of this nonsense. There is a superpower that if you put in the effort, you can benefit from, and it's a lot of effort. Look, I'm pretty committed to my reading. I still know nothing, man. It's wild. I've been pretty serious about researching Islam for 5 years. I've been practicing now for I'd say about 6 months or thereabouts, and earnestly, like I'm doing the right things to the best of my ability, I still know nothing. And I still feel there's so much more that I need to learn. So there's definite effort involved. But if you put that effort in, I mean, I'm very grateful to have support of so many, wonderful people as well. I'm very lucky like that, especially living where I live. If you do put in the effort into Islam, you have an absolute shield against all the nonsense and all the agendas that are being pushed on you and your kids. It's a very powerful thing. It's a very pertinent thing in today's day and age.
Look, we need to work together. Jews, Christians, Muslims. I really believe there is an elephant in the room. We don't believe Jesus is God, Son of God. We believe he's a messenger of God. Let's get this out of the way. You have people in your own family who are Democrat, Republican. You still respect each other. Your family, right?
Yeah.
We're the human family. So how do we get this across to our Christian friends and neighbors and others out there? Many are seeing this. They're seeing that Islam is his last front standing. When I interviewed Andrew Tate for the first time, he saw this also, and he was someone who used to be a Christian. Many Christians are seeing this. Even Islamophobes are almost like when they're seeing all the different colors in the churches. The Pope is succumbing. Everybody, they're like, man, Islam is something to consider now.
Yeah, exactly. Even the Islamophobes are like, hang on a sec.
Yeah.
There could be something there.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you say? I mean, this is so, because we're much more powerful together. They want to split us apart. But besides, we get this out of the way, the whole, we still love Jesus. We say peace be upon him. But now after we got the elephant in the room, let's get on to bigger things.
Yep, 100%. I mean, for me, I think regardless of your religion, I think it's very important to be aware that evil exists in this world.
Yeah.
And that evil is after the minds of your children. It is after the health of your marriage. It is after your sense of being a masculine, capable man. This whole term, toxic masculinity, that's an assault on healthy, positive masculinity. That's all that is. So I think any religion that you choose to pursue, be aware of the fact that you need to take it seriously, because the alternative is Satan, the forces of evil, temptation, hedonism, liberalism. These things have a very real risk of derailing your life. And so if you don't actively practice a religion, which, as per my lived experience, the most powerful and structured and the one with the most depth is Islam, then you are at risk, you are vulnerable of having your life affected by the forces of evil. I mean, it might sound a bit dramatic, but I really believe that's where we are as a species. I really believe that.
Tristan, what do you think? Is he close to accepting Islam? Did he accept Islam, or is he just has a much more of a, where's he at?
I definitely hope that Tristan reverts. However, he does take his faith pretty seriously with his current faith.
Yeah.
So I think that's one obstacle to him reverting. 2, he does like a drink. So that's going to be a big step for him. But I do believe that he's a deeply intelligent individual. He's a thinker. I'd love you to have a chat with him at some point. He is so. His perspective on life blows my mind off him with the analysis that he shares on the human condition. The social commentary that he provides, but he just doesn't put it out there as much. I have to believe a man of that intelligence and that understanding and that analysis will eventually choose Islam, because it's the only answer. As to how long it takes, I think it might be a long path, but knowing Tristan and knowing his ability to properly read the chessboard of life, I think the inevitable outcome is him choosing Islam.
It doesn't take much work. One, I always say a sincere, earnest desire to want to know the truth, asking the Creator alone for guidance, and then doing your homework. I mean, you look at Prophet Muhammad's life. What did he do it for? Money, for fame, for power, for just, is this Quran from the devil? Is it from human beings? When you, one by one, systematically, you knock these things out, you see that, no, this could not have come from a human being. There's too many facts, not fiction in there. From a group of human beings. It could not have from the devil. It calls you to do things opposite to what the devil wants you to do, and on and on. Then it's like and then what's the motive? The Prophet Muhammad, who said, peace be upon him, who said, if you would give me when they said, what do you want? Do you want all the beautiful women? We'll give you the women. Do you want the power? We'll give you the status. Usually there's something that people want. He's the leader that people come in. He's sitting on the floor, not on the throne, right?
Yeah.
If you put the sun in my hand, the right moon in my left, I'm not going to abandon this mission. No, the truth. Why? It's easy to find an imposter after you study his life a little bit, and women. How much time passes when you have these fraudsters and they expose the man, right? The guy who claimed to be a prophet or this, that, and then they come out and they start talking. Name one woman that came from his wives that came out except as praising him. That's
I
the
like
heart.
that. That's a good
This
point.
is very, very, powerful when you think about it. And we're not even talking about just the Quran itself. This is the meaning of the Quran, not the Arabic, but this is another thing. This whole life is documented. It's not hard to find out if he's truly an imposter. Just look at the message that he's bringing.
Yeah, 100%. And the amount of depth, the amount of benefit. I'd say even if people haven't really accepted, Tawheed, they haven't really accepted
Tawheed. This is the pure monotheism.
Exactly. Even if they haven't really come to the point where they accept that yet, that will come with time. The more you read, the more you realize it's clear. But still, you cannot debate that the good that comes from earnestly practicing Islam, both in terms of benefit for you as an individual, both in terms of benefit for how best you serve your family, your brothers, your community. Yeah. Okay, it might take you a while to really accept Tawheed, but man, you cannot deny immediately you start practicing Islam, you'll be a better man, you'll be more disciplined, you'll be better out, higher output, more ethical, just better able to resist the temptations and hedonism and nonsense of the world. To me, that's the starting point, which I think the Dawah community could focus on. You can talk about, hey, we want you to believe this, we want you to believe that. How about we live in a world where evil is real, you can see the agendas, you can see the hedonism, you can see the temptation. Through this book and through this faith and through the support of the Ummah, you can resist all of that nonsense. You can have a shield against wokeism, against liberalism, against people trying to attack you for being a man with traditional values, and you can go and know you are living on a day-to-day basis your most ethical, your most high output, your most disciplined life. That to me is the key draw.
So go ahead and tell me, so you had something interesting happen. Your son, he also trains BJJ Jiu-Jitsu, and he almost got bullied.
Yeah, indeed. So my boy is, we started him with his boxing really young, both my daughter as well. And then my son continued with his boxing, had his first fight when he was 7, and now BJJ is the focus. And my daughter's gone on to gymnastics, but she's got hands. She can look after herself, which is great. But yeah, just not that long ago, my son was confronted by a bully who was a few years older and I think a lot heavier, a lot bigger. And I mean, this speaks to why I respect the fact that you've created an infrastructure with which to train your son to be, that masculine provider, protector, capable of violence, but using it in a good way. The men are meant to be like this, despite all this toxic masculinity rubbish that people try and push. So this bigger kid had my son up against the wall and was hitting him. And I said to my son, because I want to understand, his mental resilience, I said, what was it like? He said, well, Dad, he didn't really land any punches, and those he did land, I've been hit harder before in the ring. So I'm like, okay, nice, there's some mental toughness there. I said, what happened? He said, well, I was ducking a bit, and then I saw that he was punching with his hands down, so I hit him with my overhand right. I said, where did you hit him, son? He said, I put it just here. I'm like, oh, right on the button. And what happened after that? And my son said, fairly humbly, I didn't want to fight anymore after that, Dad. And to me, that was a very gratifying moment because years and years and a lot of money and time spent teaching my boy how to fight. Not only did he demonstrate mental resilience, he wasn't fazed when someone bigger was trying to hurt him. He didn't get emotional, didn't get upset. He kept cool and kept calm. And also, he, in a very efficient way, without hurting the guy, excessively, he ended the fight. And I think every father should look to raise a son who doesn't start fights, but my goodness, he should know how to end them. Cleanly, efficiently, that's it. And so for me, that was a very gratifying moment to see that all the effort, all the years I put into teaching my boy, encouraging my boy to, with both boxing, kickboxing and BJJ, he is mentally resilient. He does stay calm under pressure. And even when he's being attacked by somebody, he can finish the fight in a way that doesn't cause any lasting damage. He doesn't lose his cool and, jump on anyone's head. Yeah. I think the fight sports are a very noble way to build a capable young man, but also a man of character, a man of ethics and mental resilience.
What else, what other fatherly advice do you give to your son? So, okay, you got him trained to be able to defend himself. What other things that you teach him, instill in him, and you advise other parents to instill in their children to bring him to be a confident, masculine male?
Definitely. I mean, this is a subject I talk about for ages, but the one thing that I've noticed in business is the value of persistence, and Tate talks about this. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the world, but if you're that guy who finds one way to add value to society and just doesn't give up, finds a skill that can monetize and just works and works and works, that's where success lies. And so I've taught my son, even at an early age, even when he was 4 or 5, I say to my son, what happens when things get hard? I say, you keep going, Papa. And the way I sort of drilled that into him is when we do story time, when I was putting the kids to bed, I'd tell them stories and they could choose which way the story went. Yeah. So I'd say to my son, you're walking up a hill to fight a dragon and rescue a princess. Your legs are getting tired. What do? Do you give up? No, Papa, I keep going. Now you're fighting that dragon. You know, your arms are getting tired. You know, you're sweating. You're exhausted. Do you give up? No, Papa, I keep going. So now, even to this day, if anyone says to my son, what do you do when things get tough in life? He'll instantly say, you keep going.
Resilience, just keep
going. That persistence is drilled deep in his mind. And I think that'll really bring him benefits throughout his life. On a deep level, a big part of his identity is, you know, you've got to put in the work. Even nowadays, I say to him, I say to my son, look, when your dad grew up, I didn't know what business was. I didn't know what money was. My parents, you know, both broke and on government welfare handouts. I said to my son, with the benefits you've got, with the role models you've got around, with the exposure you have, you know, to business, to the big questions he asks about, you know, global supply chain, about, you know, macroeconomics and so on. I said, you have the potential to build businesses, to build an empire, to do incredibly well in life. And his answer is, if I put the work in, Dad. You know, on a deep level, he is now holding himself to account to know that he can be that hero of his own story if he puts the work in. I think that's quite a noble thing. The other thing that I really program in, if you will, or, you know, role model, is I've made it very clear to my son that there are agendas out there and there are entities that want him to adopt belief systems that are not in his best interest. To the point where he'll sit and he'll watch Netflix and he'll say, oh, look, Dad, here we have a moment where a girl is going to beat up 10 guys. You know, he's calling out the nonsense. He pointed out to me, oh, Dad, I see on Netflix there's a girl power section, but there's no boy power section. Now, I'm not going to push my politics on my boy, but I'll say, why do you think that is? And then he knows that there is a push against masculinity, and there's a push against, you know, toxic masculinity, and there's this push to push women up. And his belief system is, it's good to push women up, but you don't need to push women down. Don't need to push men down, sorry. And he can see there is a push against traditional masculinity, and I've made it clear for him that he can choose his own belief systems in life. He doesn't have to listen to what the TV says. He doesn't have to listen to you know, what adults are trying to push him to believe. He is the one who should choose his own belief systems in life. I think that's a very important thing as a parent. You can't always be around to explain something your kid might see on YouTube, or to explain something your kid might see on the street even. You have to teach them that there are entities out there that want to program you in a way and get you to adopt belief systems that are not in your best interest. You have the right as a young man to choose your own belief systems in life. Be skeptical of people who are trying to push their belief systems on you. That's something I'm quite passionate about as well.
Critical thinking skills at a young age.
Exactly.
Getting them.
And understanding that, I mean, without using those words, Shaitan exists, and he wants to make you an unfulfilled, unhappy, easily controlled sheep. So you need to watch out for that and offset it.
And this is a thing when people who have denied God, denied the Creator, when they see all the evil, and I've had a friend of mine who used to be also somebody who was denying, but then he saw all the evil, and he said, man, if there is a devil, there has to be a God, obviously.
Yeah. And that's actually, Tate said that as well. You cannot deny that Satan exists. Look at the way evil. Shaitan has overtaken so many areas of the West, of Western culture. We talk about hip-hop culture. We talk about, you know, these different agendas being pushed on children that just don't make sense. Again, you could never bring a female stripper into a classroom, but if you bring a male stripper dressed up as a woman, that's fine. All this blatant nonsense. You have to see that evil exists, so therefore, by extension, God has to exist as well. I think it's very clear in today's day and age.
Thank you, brother. Really nice talking with you. Any other words of advice or anything else you want to...
I mean, just to rehash, I really do believe that if you're a man in today's world who has traditional values, and you want to be okay with those, if you want to be that provider, that protector, that man who's stoic and mentally resilient, and you want to reject all of this liberal programming, this wokeism, this push towards hedonism, no, go do drugs, no, go and explore your sexuality, go do whatever, identify as a coffee cup if you choose. There is a way with which to protect those belief systems and to understand them even better, and that is Islam. And so I'd say to any man in the West who is feeling that their belief systems are weird and they are, you know, perhaps being ostracized or negatively judged for having traditional beliefs or believing that traditional gender roles are important, within Islam and the Ummah, there are people who have the same beliefs as you, and that you can, if you adopt Islam and you practice it earnestly, you effectively have a shield against all that wokeism, that liberalism, that hedonism, which is a very powerful thing. It's an age-old thing, and so I think it's very positive to see those men with traditional values, such as myself, such as the Tates, reverting to Islam. And I think more and more men who have those belief systems, especially in the West, and they feel those belief systems are under attack, Islam gives you a way to realize that it's okay to have those belief systems, that having traditional views is a positive thing. Understanding the sacredness of the family unit is a positive thing. Supporting traditional gender roles is a positive thing. Islam gives you that guidance with which to not only protect those belief systems, but to live true to them in a very healthy, very productive way, and a very clear code with which to live. And I really do hope that more and more men in the West with traditional values close to their heart consider Islam, because I think it's the only answer to the evil that you see in liberalism and wokeism and all these agendas being pushed on our kids and so on.
Common sense now is if you see someone like Andrew Tate, someone like you, and many others who are saying the same thing now, it behooves you to go ahead and pick up the book. This is the one that Dylan, he said Andrew Tate gifted him.
Okay,
This
nice.
I think it was this one. And we actually, so people can go to TheDeenShow.com. We'll get, this will be a gift from me to you. This is the book. This is the book that actually, not this particular one, but Andrew Tate was walking out of the Romanian jail with the Quran, correct? And this is the one that you Jew, are telling people to Islam, everything is here, read the book. Want to know about Jesus? Read the book. His Blessed Mother, read about the book. About Tawheed, pure monotheism, purpose of life, where you're going when you die. Everything is here in the book. Read the book.
Yeah,
Read the book.
it's real. The amount of depth in that single text is absolutely life-alteringly, mind-bendingly powerful. It's you cannot argue that the power that lies in that book is like nothing else. I've not come across anything like it in my life.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very again for being with us. Inshallah, we'll meet again.
Inshallah,
soon.
Brother.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, man. It's a real honor, brother. Thank you, man.
You too, brother.
Cheers, man.
Assalamu alaikum.
We've been told that they're out to kill us all.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. We went to the streets to ask Americans about Islam. Here's what they said. Do you know anything about Islam?
No.
Do you know anything about Islam?
No, sadly.
Do you know anything about Islam?
Not really.
Do you know anything about Islam?
No, sorry.
You know what Islam means?
Islam? No. We've been told that they're out to kill us all.
That's what you've been told, that Muslims are out to kill you all.
Well, that's what they say on TV.
Anything.
I know it's in the Middle East, isn't it?
Well, then you're going to have 4 wives.
Brothers and sisters, as you can see, there are so many Americans who don't know about Islam. We need your help to change that. Help us to build the Deen Center, the first mega dawah center in America. Click the donate right now. May God Almighty Allah reward all of you.
عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي فالمعاني